Okay, so welcome everyone and good evening. The title of tonight's session is "God Purpose." I am not Renee Rahatsky. I'm sorry to say. I would like to be someday. Um, I am Mark Bernstein. I'm the growth development consultant with the Central East Regional Group, and happy and honored to have the opportunity to talk to you about mission, and that's what we'll be talking about this evening. So some of you may remember the Blues Brothers movie, one of my favorite movies. Jake and Elwood get out of jail and decide to get the band together. And Jake says to Elwood, "First you trade the Cadillac for a microphone, then you lie to me about the band, and now you're going to put me right back in the joint." And Elwood says, "They're not going to catch us. We're on a mission from God." So even the Blues Brothers feel that they're on a mission. Now I know that in our congregations, the word God is a debatable uh, uh, item. So you can fill in the blank tonight in your congregation. You're on a mission from whatever resonates with you. But more and more and more congregations are beginning to understand the importance of mission in their congregation and the importance of a mission statement that resonates, that is memorable, and that speaks to the heart of the congregation. So tonight we'll talk about some definitions of mission. We'll delve into the components of a mission statement, and then we'll conclude tonight by talking about a process that hopefully you'll be interested in for creating a personal mission statement. As leaders in your congregation, what is your mission? What is your reason for being? Um, Again, I'll for those a couple of people just joined us and welcome. You are all muted right now, and I will unmute everyone at a couple of times during the presentation and invite you to ask questions or respond to what I've said or add some stories, some items from your congregations. So let's start with a series of definitions from various authors. Tom Beloit, who is the author of the article that we had asked you to read prior to tonight, and if you haven't, it'll be available on the website. This is a chapter on mission from the book The Growing Church. He says that mission is the need for members of a congregation to be aligned in a common purpose, to be articulate about why they exist and what they are in the world to do, and to achieve clarity in this understanding. Alignment, existence, and clarity. Beloit also compares a mission to a journey across the sea and writes, if a religious community is like a large boat traveling across the sea, its mission is like a map of where it wants to go on the journey. Without a mission, the boat is merely adrift, susceptible to the whims of wind and surf, or is commandeered by whoever is the most opinionated and determined to seize control of its steering wheel. Having a clear mission helps us to know that we are en route toward our goals. There's a lot in that quote. So the Reverend David Bombaugh says that we have to ask, instead of why does this church exist, why must this congregation exist? And I think that's a really powerful notion. Why must this congregation exist? Mission, he says, speaks to the congregation's calling, the source of its integrity, and its central reason for being. What are we called to be and to do? So what would the world be like? What would its members be like if your congregations did not exist? That's getting to the core of the congregation's mission. Bombaugh asks three questions related to mission. What do we believe? Whom do we serve? And to whom or what are we responsible? Those are the questions, he says, with which every viable religious movement must wrestle. So long as those essential questions remain unaddressed, the dream will remain unfulfilled. Here's a couple of more thoughts about mission. This is from the Reverend David Owen O'Quill, who says that mission is not a statement. Mission is the reason you exist. It is building a bridge between our faith and the people we seek to reach. David's orientation related to mission is more external. He believes that congregations exist to serve the outside world. We can debate that, and certainly many will say that we can only be outwardly focused if we are also healthy internally. So that's part of our mission as well. But I love the image of a bridge between our faith and the people that we seek to reach. In our congregations, we are constantly going through change, and growing, vital, mature, healthy congregations understand that change is inevitable. Having a strong mission also helps us to deal with the vagaries of change. And Joanna Fontaine Crawford, in her book, Let Mission Drive Us, said the only way to welcome change is to have a strong understanding of the congregation's mission, that which commands its very existence. These are all really bold statements in case you haven't noticed. Without a dynamic mission that drives it, a congregation will drop to the de facto implicit mission of having a community of like-minded people. If this is the goal, then people will reject change, because as soon as they establish the community, they will focus on maintaining it, which automatically precludes transformation. We have to be more than just a community of like-minded people, and a strong, powerful, dynamic mission reminds us of that, so that when change occurs, we embrace it and we move forward boldly. So the mission then is the core purpose of the congregation. It is why you exist. And one of the resources that we have available for you on the website is a video entitled Start With Why. It's about an 18-minute video. It's a TED Talk. And the author of the book speaks about the importance of starting not with what you do, but with why you do it. And that's the mission of our congregation. Patrick Lencioni, in his book, The Advantage, Why Organizational Health Trumps Everything Else in Business, tells us that an organization's core purpose, why it exists, has to be completely idealistic. And that's an interesting term. That employees and members of a congregation need to know that at the heart of what they do lies something grand and aspirational. It doesn't mean that the mission of the congregation is not realistic, but it has to represent and be at the heart of what the congregation does, knowing that what they do is grand and aspirational. So let me talk for a few minutes about values, which is at the core of our mission. And again, for those a couple of folks who came on a little later, Katie and Sarah, welcome. I'm going to stop a couple of times and invite you to share your reactions to what I'm talking about. But let me go through the values as an essential part of the mission. And again, this comes from the Lencioni book, The Advantage. Lencioni talks about 4 values in a congregation: the core values, the aspirational values, the accidental values, and the assumed values. In the process of creating a mission, the importance of identifying the congregation's core values cannot be overstated. Those values define the personality of the congregation. They provide clarity with how members are supposed to behave. So let's start with the core values. They are the 2 or 3 behavioral traits that are inherent in an organization. They lie at the heart of the congregation's identity. They do not change over time, and they must already exist in the life of the congregation. And I'll elaborate on this as we compare all of these values. Core values are used to guide every aspect of the congregation's life, from welcoming visitors to obtaining membership, to worship, to programming, to how we act during coffee hour. Everything that we do in our congregation needs to be based on the core values of our congregation. Then there are the aspirational values. These are the values that a congregation wants to have or wishes it had. But they are values that are not inherent in the congregation. For example, a congregation may want to be multicultural or may want to engage in additional shared ministry among members of the congregation. But those are values that are not there yet. They are values that the congregation aspires to achieve. So aspirational values represent a vision for the future. It might be an immediate future, but it's still something that's in the future. They are characteristics that a congregation wants to have, wishes it already had, and believes it must develop in order to become the congregation it wants to be. They are values that one must intentionally instill in the congregation, and achieving these aspirational values may require changes to the way in which the congregation operates. So again, core values are those values that already exist within the congregation. Aspirational values are those values or characteristics that the congregation wishes to have or believes they must develop in order to become the congregation that they want to be. The third category of values are assumed values. And these are values that your congregational members might express or be implied in a behavioral covenant or even a disruptive person policy, which tells people what they should not be doing and what might happen if they violate a covenant. They are usually unspoken, minimal expectations of behavior that people have to engage in order to fit the culture of the congregation. Assumed values are the minimum behavioral standards that are required in a congregation. And they are values that should not be unique to your congregation. They should occur in every Unitarian Universalist congregation across the country. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about values like honesty, integrity, and respect. These values do not set the congregation apart from other congregations. They do not uniquely define your congregations. It is assumed that your congregational members already adhere to and believe in these values. Now, I'm a realist, and I know that not everybody in your congregation demonstrates honesty and respect and integrity at all times. But you don't need a mission in order to ensure that people engage in these. These are the values that are inherent in our principles. And that's why when I see mission statements that say our mission is to adhere to our Unitarian Universalist principles, it really isn't saying anything new. And it's certainly not adding to the life of the congregation. It's just stating what we should be doing already, what we assume are the values that we possess. And then the fourth type of value, according to Lencioni, is what he calls accidental values. These are values that happen over time in our congregation, but in all likelihood are unintentional. They don't necessarily serve the mission, and they may actually work against the aspirational values, making it more difficult for congregations to be the kind of congregation that they want to be. Accidental values do not necessarily serve the good of the congregation. They can prevent new ideas and people from flourishing. They can drive away visitors. So, for example, if the core value of the congregation had been openness and transparency in communication, and the congregation experiences an incident where people felt betrayed by a leader of the congregation, over time, the values begin to change. The accidental values become one of secrecy and a lack of transparency. And then one day a member of the congregation walks in and says or thinks to himself or herself, when did secrecy become a core value of this congregation? Well, it didn't intentionally. It was accidental. It happened as a result of an incident, or it happened over time as a result of a change of leadership. And then before the congregation knows it, these are the values that are seeping into congregational life. The key, I think, to understanding the interplay of these four values, it particularly is the difference between the core values and the aspirational values. How do you tell the difference? Well, Lencioni says you need to ask a couple of questions. Is the trait or the value inherent and natural for the congregation, and has it been apparent in the congregation for a long time? If it has, then it's a core value. Or is the value something that the congregation has to work hard to cultivate? And if that's the case, then it's an aspirational value. If a value in a congregation seems contrary to the core value of the congregation, the way in which the congregation always was, then it's an accidental value. And the congregation needs to examine, how did this become a value that took precedence in congregational life? Let me just show you one more slide and get your response to this and to see whether or not this piece around values is clear for you and how it relates to what's going on in your congregations. So here's what brings all this together. The core values are at the heart of the mission of any congregation. The aspirational values are built into the vision of the congregation, where the congregation wants to go. The assumed values lie in the covenant or the intentional culture that is created, how members of the congregation want to be together. And the accidental values are those things that happen over time that might tend to drag the congregation down because they are values that are contrary to the mission and the vision and the covenant of the congregation.